Hey guys, Miss King here again. I'm going to do a video today on decimal points. I'm going to talk about the place value of your decimals, and I'm going to talk about rounding. And towards the end of this video, I will talk about writing your decimal in expanded form. These seem to be points that we are struggling with in class, and we're going to just have a little video to help us out. Ellie's with me today. She's not asleep, so she wanted to join in on the video, so just bear with me. She may be messing with some of my stuff. All right. So the first thing I'm going to show you right now is your decimal point place value. I said decimal point place value because there is a decimal point inside of your number. So if you look right in the middle of my place value chart, there is a decimal point. Anything behind my decimal point, these are my numbers that are less than one whole. I wrote that right here, less than one whole. So you have your tenth, you have your hundredth, you have your thousandths, and so on. It would go to 10 thousandths, 100 thousandths, millionths, and so on. All right in front of the decimals are my whole numbers. These numbers are whole numbers. We have our ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. Now, I also wrote two more little notes on here. Anything in front of the decimal place, the numbers are going to get larger as they go. They're getting larger by 10. So if I took 1 and I multiplied it by 10, that gets me 10. If I took 10 and multiplied it by 10, that gets me 100. If I took 100 and multiplied it by 10, that gets me 1,000. Anything behind the decimal, it makes it a smaller number every place value it goes over. So I wrote on here that it decreases the number by dividing by 10 each time. So if I had 1 and goodness, you okay? Okay. So if I had 1 and I divided by 10, that would get me 1/10. If I had 1/10 and I divided that by 10, that would get me 1/100th. If I had 1/100th and I divided it by 10, that would get me 1,000th. Now I could keep going. So the next thing we're going to talk about is rounding. Rounding seems to be a big issue because we always seem to want to round to the ones or to the tens or any whole number. We struggle a little bit rounding to our decimal places. So I have a few little rules to follow for rounding. The first one is the big issue that we struggle with is finding the place value you are rounding to. So I'm going to pause for a second and I'm going to talk about this. So like I said, a lot of us want to round to the ones place automatically. We don't want to look at any other number besides the ones place. That is not always going to be the case. Sometimes in your directions, they will tell you to round to the nearest 10. Sometimes they'll tell you to round to the nearest 100 or 1,000. You have to make sure you read your directions carefully so you know which place that you're supposed to round to. All right, going back to my rules. The next rule is to look next door. That doesn't mean actually go next door and look inside someone else's classroom. That's not what I'm asking you to do. I want you to look at the number that's right next to the number that you are rounding to. You okay? All right, my third rule, actually third and fourth rule go together. This is a rule that you have heard several times throughout your entire elementary career. It is 5 or more, you raise the score. 4 or less, you let it rest. Now add a little bit on the bottom one because I've also had a few students that were trying to decrease the number that you were rounding. And I'll explain that a little bit further in just a minute. So I wrote on here, 4 or less, you let it rest at the same number. You're not going to lower the number. It stays at the same number unless the number next door was 5 or more. And then you're going to go up one number. So if your number you were rounding was a 5, it would go up to a 6. All right. So we're going to practice a few now. Ellie, stop. All right, so my instructions on this one, it says to round to the nearest tenth. The best idea I can tell you on this one is to underline your tenth place. Your 10th place. I'm going to go back to my place value chart if Ellie will let me have it. Your 10th is the first number behind the decimal. So I'm going to find my first number behind my decimal, which is a 7. And then I need to go next door. It's an 8, which means I need to raise my score. Any number in front of the number you are rounding will not change. So I had 68 and 76 hundredths. So my 68 will stay the same at 68. The number that I'm worried about changing is my 10th place right here. Stop, Ellie. So this was 5. You okay? Stop. If you 5 or more, I raise the score. So this 7, right? I'm sorry. I went the wrong way with this because I'm trying to use the camera. I'm so sorry. The 6 right here is 5 or more. So this is going to bump my 7 up to an 8. So my answer would be 68 and 8/10. Another way you can do this, if you aren't confident looking at your next door, you can draw a number line and place this number on a number line. That way you can see, is this number closer to 68 and 8/10, or is it closer to 68 and 7/10? That's another example of how you can answer this problem. All right, the next one, it says 8 and 691 thousandths. Now you see there's a lot more places here than what I need. That's okay. You're just gonna do it the same way you did this one. You're gonna find your 10th place, which is a 6. You're gonna go next door to the 9, and it's going to raise my score. So my answer to that problem would be 8 and 7/10. All right, the next one is 5 and 974 thousandths. This is another one that has more numbers than what I need. I'm just going to underline my 10th place, go next door, and it's more than 5, so it's going to raise the score. Now this is a 9. When it raises the score, that bumps it up to a 10. And when you have a 10 right here, you're going to, it's kind of like adding. You're going to put your 0 and then carry your 1. So I'm going to put my 0 and I'm going to carry my 1. So that is now 5 and 1, and that makes 6. So my answer to that one would be 6, just 6. You notice that even though it had more numbers than what I needed, I didn't have to rewrite them down. Because when you round and you're rounding to your nearest 10th, any number behind it is gone. All right, my last one for the 10ths is 11. It's 11 and 516 thousandths. So like before, we're going to look at our 10th place. I'm sorry. Like before, we're going to look at our 10th place. It's 5. We're going to go next door, and it is a 1. So that's actually going to rest at itself. So my answer to this one would be 11 and 5/10. All right. So I had more on that I wrote down, but I'm not sure I'm going to get to them in this video. So if you would just click on the next video for me, it's going to be on the hundredths and thousandths place, and also talk about expanded form. Thanks. I'm sorry for all the interruptions. We're happy to see Mommy now. You gonna say bye-bye? You gonna say bye-bye? Say bye-bye. Give them lovin's.